It's the SA Rugby Magazine Lions series brought to you by Betway. Welcome. We are in the build-up to the third test. I'm Zelling Null and I'm joined by Mark Keohane and Scott Gibbs, the Lions legend, for a preview of the final deciding test in the series. Hi chaps, welcome to the show. Where's everybody?
I'm on a hospital at the Cape Medi Clinic outside on a balcony because my little daughter, Pikey, born 2 days ago, is in the room screaming. So, and I know that Scotty's in a much more convenient place. He's in Athens.
Yeah, no, I'm on the southeast coast of Athens, surrounded by fire. Obviously, Athens is lit up at the moment, so it had its inherent challenges. But just making my way slowly back to Europe, the UK. Looking forward to this third test decider.
Scotty, the Flames, they're the perfect sort of setting for a discussion about this final test and the Flames on and off the field leading up to it. Just your thoughts on the team selection there for the Lions heading into this one.
Well, I think that the selection was an exciting one in the sense that the build-up, we knew there were going to be changes, and the changes were going to give us an idea of the footprint or the identity of the Lions team and squad going into this decider. But I think Gatland looks to have gone back to kind of an element of safety with Aki joining Henshaw in the midfield, and but much needed change at the back three because of the erraticness of last week's performance and also the insecurity that it provided in the first test. So Williams and Adams get their test shots underway. So I expect it to be, again, another attritional type of performance. But the bench, if you look at the bench, it does suggest that there could be some disguise if Finn Russell gets some game time. And hopefully, if he does, it means that the Lions will obviously need and try to play to win rather than play not to lose this test.
So, I mean, we'll get into unpacking the Lions team sort of unit by unit, but Mark, just looking at the Springbok selections there, no real surprises in the starting lineup. Just your thoughts around some of those selections?
I was looking at the Springbok lineup. I don't think there's any surprises for me. A lot of people made an issue why Herschel Jantjies doesn't start, why Cobus Reiner starts. Cobus Reiner, Andre Pollard, they're teammates at Montpellier. If you look at the World Cup, Cobus Reiner plays a very attritional type game. And I think he's the perfect guy to start, and Herschel Jantjies is the perfect bloke to close the game up with 30 minutes to go. I think both will be very vital to a successful mock performance. I like the fact that they've been fairly conservative in their selection, so they've trusted the squad that's there. If you think they've lost Peter Steph Toy, they've lost Wayne Vermeulen, and they've lost Pap de Klerk, to lose those three players and to still potentially come out with a series will be a massive fillip for this team. I like the fact that Lutz back starting. They've said you've got to go and empty the tank from the outset, and that they've retained their faith with Franco Mostert. I mean, he really has come on in the last 2 years. They've said to him, you're comfortable playing lock, playing blindside flank. They've given him that, and they've kept Van Staden on the bench. And I think to show the respect they have for the occasion and also for the quality of the Lions side, Morné Steyn's selection on the bench, they have no doubt this could come down to a three-pointer in the last 2 minutes. And for all Damian Williams' qualities, goal kicking and consistency hasn't been there. So they've got some insurance policy for Pollard as well. So when I look at that squad, it's one that is recognizing the occasion and has a healthy regard for the quality of the opposition they're going to be up against. And I think this will be the test match where we're going to see a clearer picture of the two sides. And I think this is the closer one to what I would have expected from the Lions from the outset. I think he's, by default, got a lot of his combinations right. I would have loved to see Marcus Smith on the bench and not Finn Russell. Given Marcus Smith's the form player, Finn Russell has played one game, he's been a boot for most of the tour. So I'm just hell of excited that hopefully we get 80 minutes of rugger and balling play for about 35.
Scott, Mark spoke there about Morné Steyn coming off the South African bench to basically close the game out. He's sort of the definitive closer, the guy who can kick the goal kicks. He's done it in 2009. He's built a career around that. It's quite a stark contrast to what we're seeing on the Lions bench, where we've got Gats rolling the dice on a guy like Finn Russell and Sam Simmons. Do you get the feeling like the Lions are looking at that fourth final quarter as an opportunity to blow the game wide open? Almost the opposite to what the Springboks are looking at it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, listen, when you talk about closing out the game, there's no one better than Morné Steyn. And the stark contrast is that the bench on the Lions side is kind of more explosive. And there seems to be the inclusion of Finn Russell, obviously, to create deception and to create some opportunities, one-on-one opportunities that may be a game breaker. I wouldn't say that so much as an insurance policy for the Lions, but I think the Lions need to go out of the starting gate. They need to stay ahead, go ahead. And if Finn Russell comes on, I'd like to see him have, maybe 30, 35 minutes rather than coming on late in the last quarter to try and rescue it, because I think that feels like desperation to me.
Right. Mark, it's unclear how long Lewitt is going to last. You spoke about him emptying the tank. When he goes off, we're expecting Franco Mostert to move to lock and one of Kwagga or Marco van Staden coming on to join the back row. Just in terms of how that impacts the second half of this game, especially if those characters are coming into a faster paced game with Finn Russell moving the ball. Do you think those are good selections?
Look, I think, Scott spoke about this last week as well. The Boks, we pretty much know who their 23, who their 25 players are. And what they've been very good at, if you go back to the 2019 World Cup final where they lost Bongi and they lost Lutz in the first 20 minutes, they adapted, they got on with it. They've lost some key players in this series, in both test matches. And their challengers got on with it, and it's adapt and kind of play. I thought Kwagga, when he came on, when they did the switches last week, it worked very well. Lewitt, obviously, key to that. What I find about this Boks side is that they have an identity. We know what they're going to do. Lawrence Dallaglio says they do plan A. If they don't do it well, they're going to do plan A better the next week. So when you look at the Lions, they seem to want to grow into a certain identity in the build-up games. But the moment they played SAA, they came unstuck. The first test was one of attrition, and they fell away in the last 20 minutes of the second test and played no rugby. So they picked a team that wants to match the Boks physically, but also wants to play this flamboyant, open style of game that they believe can cut the Boks to pieces. So 8 9 matches into a tour, final one, and I would say they have to win this to save the tour in a sense, because yes, they'll be the series winners, but the identity of the tour, if they lose it by a point or 10, it would be a disastrous tour for Gatland in terms of his selections. He would have used 31 players in the 3 tests.
I think that's a fair point, Mark, given the fact that there's a distinctive lack of personality. The fingerprint, the footprint that the Lions have tried to implement going into the test series really hasn't mirrored the early endeavours of the type of football that we've seen. And whilst we understand that test match rugby is a lot tighter, the margins and pressure mounts increasingly, is that they haven't been able to convert that into a total performance, i.e. a 60-minute, 80-minute performance. So both sides have had very dominant second halves over the last 2 weekends. And I think it's a team that kind of actually, puts the most application into how you control each minute of play, every aspect of it, the first tackle, the first pass. And clearly there has to be more of a bold approach and a confident approach and back in their own confidence, so that they don't get into that, what we saw last week is a complete capitulation in the second half, because they lacked ideas or they lacked direction. So they need to get in the game early, stay in the game early, and build that test match so you can see the influence that the bench can make, rather than just a reactive decision to bring certain players on, hoping that it's going to get you results.
And that's certainly what it looks like, Scott, because we've had, the first test, Ali Price came in for rave reviews, and then he was swapped out for the second test, and now he's back for the third. Stuart Hogg seems to be a fixture at fullback in the first 2, now dumped for Liam Williams. And Josh Adams, who many thought should have started in the first 2 tests, out in the cold and then back for the most crucial one. It does seem like there's been a lack of confidence in the decision-making throughout this tour.
Well, I think if all three of us got together and we turned the clock back 3 weeks ago, this is probably what the first test side should have looked like from a Lions perspective. Liam Williams, very, very good under the high ball, one of the great counter-attacking fullbacks. Josh Adams, who up until the week before the first test was the shining light in a Lions jersey. So some of the selections that we've seen so far haven't really mirrored the type of performance that we've come to expect. So there is huge onus on 10, 12, and 13 on Saturday to be the catalyst to get across the game line, because they have knocked on the box door. It has been fortified. There's been no gifts, and if that continues on Saturday, then they're going to have to make changes, and maybe before the halftime locker shed, because this test match, obviously will decide, as Mark says, either the get out of jail, one of the most spectacular third test series deciders we've seen by the Lions, or one of the most disappointing 80 minutes of football in Lions history.
Mark, the unpredictable... Oh, yeah, go, Mark.
Yeah, so if I can just come in there, looking at the Lions, Scott, when they started against Japan, you had Bundiaki and Henshaw in the midfield. You had Josh Adams, who's just a try and scoring machine. It's as if they've now gone back to week one after 7 matches on tour and a Japanese match and said, all right, we've tried everything. Let's just go back to our initial gut feeling. Then you've got someone like, I saw Danny Kerr, an interesting thing. He was a standby player. He said you either start Marcus Smith and Finn Russell and you say we're going to play differently, and you have Owen Farrell as your Morné stay to close out a game if it doesn't go their way. He said to them, they've got an ask about pace, and he thinks the side's not strong enough to challenge the Springboks, and he just believes that there's been too much inconsistency in the selections. And how does that garner confidence with the players? And you've got 7 or 8 players who haven't played for 3 weeks on tour. Ian Anderson being one of them. The minute Alan Jones came back, that was his tour over. How does that influence the Lions' build-up over the next few days? Are they galvanized enough to put all that aside? Or could there be this kind of thing of, I wasn't good enough for the first 2, and now you want me to come in and save your bacon on the third one?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, Mark. And I think, if you read the body language of Gatland, Peru walking around the field before the second test, that looked like a coach that was unsure as to, how this is going to play out, given the fact that they snuck the first one. They had the perfect opportunity to leave no stone unturned, and to close out the series. And as we joked, the Castle Lager convoy of beer was heading to Arabella. But of course, all that's been on stop now, and it's reverted back to what common sense would prevail was the kind of the starting lineup for the first test. But you're right. I think that the failure for the Lions to make any type of significant penetration through the first line of defense, not even create enough chaos in the wide channels to create a secondary scramble defense from a Bok perspective, has been quite alarming, because it's been very much attritional and north-south. And I said before the second test selection that perhaps resting Dan Biggar because of his HIA issue would give them at least an opportunity to see what other combinations could provide some fruitful opportunism. So there's been a lack of guile, a lack of disguise, and certainly when we talk about disguise, that Finn Russell and Marcus Smith come into that decision making. And also the fact is that Farrell's omission, when Farrell played against the Lions and came on and played at first centre, you could see that there was a far greater distribution aspect to the Lions attack, and that needs to be a key tenet in Saturday's application to the game, because if it's going to be stick to the middle 30 of the field, then the Boks are just going to eat them up all day long. And I don't buy into the theory that we want to have that, you want to have a close game and this game to be decided at the last kick. The Lions have to go out there and kind of, and dominate from the start. And that is going to be a tall order. The back 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 have been retained. So they really need to have the game of their lives to give the Lions any front foot ball. Because if you look at Aki and Henshaw, they're just going to hit, continue to hit and be continued to be hit by the Sterling midfield defence that has been the Boks.
Mark, as Scott's alluded to, the defence, the Springbok defence has been resolute throughout the series. High tackle efficiency, good dominant tackle rates. You kind of, you've got to, in Gat's defence, you've got to sort of say, well, maybe they do need to try something else. Do you feel like Finn Russell and Sam Simmons on the Lions bench is enough of a threat to radically change the game in the second half, and B, do you think it will trouble the Boks? Is there anything in those two that will catch the Boks by surprise?
I don't think anything will catch them by surprise, because we know what Sam Simmons can do. We know what Finn Russell can do. If they introduce on the 40th, 50th or 60th minute, it's all going to be dependent on what the blokes who've started have done. So if you're going for boldness, I would have said you start them. You start them and you say, let me see what you've got. And if within 30 or 40 minutes you think, we're getting smashed back, this guy is looking out of his depth, he hasn't played for a month, you do have that cover of those players who have been in this hardened test series. If it's going well, why would you introduce them? If the Boks are being dominated, you're going to keep the players who are doing it on the field. So we say we've got a Morné Steyn potentially to come out and close the game up, or if Apollo gets injured because of his goal kicking prowess. Are you going to be sending Sam Simmons and Finn Russell on to save the tour in the last 20 minutes? I think that's wholly unfair against them, because they've hardly played. We know their attacking capabilities, but the intensity of the test match, as we saw in the first two and even in the SAA game, is something like neither of them have experienced on the tour. And I think it's a big ask for them. And when I look at that Lions setup, I think that's where it looks a little bit indecisive for me and a bit of a split personality, because for me, it's like there's a bit of Greg Townsend there and there's a lot of Warren Gatland. And, as he says, he empowers his coaches and he empowers the way they want to coach and play. I just feel that you can't select by committee. We've been saying that throughout. Yeah. And Gat should either have gone pull out the Gatland way, or he should have said to Townsend, this is your test. Go and win it for the team.
Spot on. Just Scott, looking at the makeup of that Lions team, we're seeing more of the sort of national combinations we've spoken about. Ken Owens gets his start, Wyn Jones is back, and then Alan Wyn Jones at lock. There's quite a nice line-out combination there. You've got the Irish centres, and then you've got the Welshman at 10 and 15 in the back three. Do you think that that sort of increased familiarity and those combinations will help to address what went wrong in the second half last week when the Lions couldn't score any points? I mean, is that going to be a solution to that problem?
Well, time will tell, Zelia. Listen, there's semantics about test selection and so on, but I think the overriding appreciation of the four halves of football that we've seen is that there's been a distinct lack of endeavour in trying to open up the game from a fluidity perspective, and also with some wits, creation and deception, and to try and isolate those one-on-ones where those individual players, can just stand apart. So it does concern me that it will be a performance that will be led on the back of we have to match fire with fire. We just have to be better at it, and I think that's going to be a very tall order for the Lions squad. Not because they're fatiguing, and not because they're under pressure, or not because there's been a sideshow, and a lot of white noise around, the officials with Rassie and World Rugby, etc. They're both sides will be, both sides will be mentally focused on the game. But I think it's going to take an extraordinary 80 minutes of football from the Lions to sneak this one, because I just feel that momentum has switched to the Boks, and they seem to be far more comfortable in their own identity. And I think that's why I say the Lions have just lacked a personality over the last two weekends. So we're hoping, you hope for the best in that perspective. And when you really thin slice the selection, is that if there were going to be any changes of note from a football in appreciation perspective, is that why would Duhan van der Merwe retain his place? And that just strikes to me that they're going to have to rely, or want to rely, on more of a carrying presence, and his production has to go up tenfold. Because I still think that Gatland thinks that they can fatigue the Boks. But I just feel that the Boks are looking a lot more comfortable in their own skin at the moment, which is a great omen for Saturday.
Yeah, just on that, Scotty and Zels, we talk about conditioning and fatigue. Uh, they are now into their third test of the series, and and they had a lot of, while they didn't have game time, they went camp for 5 weeks. So the conditioning is there. They needed to get that 160 minutes, and then they got an extra 40 odd in that second test. But they needed to get that under the belt. And talking about fatigue and game time and that, and Scott, in the preview to the second test, you singled out Faf de Klerk and Andre Pollard. You said they were the key. If their forwards could just get parity, if they play the game of their lives, the Boks would level the series. Faf isn't there, but I look at a guy like Pollard, and you look at the great teams in world rugby. You look at the Johnny Wilkinson England era. You look at the Dan Carter New Zealand era. Pollard is that guy for us. 22 points in the World Cup final. This is a kid, in his matric year, they took him out of the classroom and he won the Under-20 World Cup against New Zealand with a drop goal at Newlands near the end. He was the World Player of the Year in his final year Under-20. 2 weeks later, he came, scored 20-odd points against Scotland on debut, scored 19 points against New Zealand at Ellis Park in his first test, scored 2 tries. Henny Kamea, God knows why, substituted him after 59 minutes when we were winning comfortably and the Boks ended up losing. This is a kid who knows how to play the big moments, and I thought he played them superbly last week. And he's a kid that can also miss kicks, and it doesn't affect his game, goal kicking. He missed the first penalty at the World Cup, just got on with it. He missed a conversion he ordinarily would have nailed. He missed a penalty he would have thought he should have got. Then banged over a sensational penalty after that. And I just think the rugby nuance and the intelligence and the calm he showed to create Mapimpi's try, just the way he held the ball, committed the defense, and chipped it over. You know, Gat says that there's been no creativity in the Boks. That is a creative 10 that can play like that. Puff's a little grab on the wrong foot, creative as well. Creativity isn't taking it 20 phases left to right, and then your winner beats the bloke on the inside or the outside. So Pollard, for me, if the Boks are as good up front as they were last week, is the key. He's the form player. He's got confidence. I don't know if Bigger's got that confidence. And Finn Russell, I don't think he knows where he is at the moment. Scotty, I just want to know from your side, just on the Boks setup, if you look at the team that they've picked in the Boks and just a little bit of what you've seen from the Boks from the first test right up until this point and the players, and given they came in a bit underdone, but how you feel certain players have evolved or how they've managed to adjust their game and what you're thinking of the Boks side is going into Saturday.
I like the selection. I really do. I mean, obviously forced because of injuries, but I don't think there's any desperation. In fact, for me, it strikes a very composed selection by the coaching team there. And Cobus Reinach, I think, is the key aspect to that, because whilst we are familiar with him in the Northern Hemisphere, but he is a very, very dangerous one-on-one player. And I think he is the kind of the passepartout, the skeleton key that can unlock this game into the type of football game that we want to see. You read their body language, they look at their application and their production. And I agree with you from the perspective of a lack of skill. No, I think there's been enormous creativity in applying pressure in the second half last weekend to unlock and unpick that Lions defense with those little worm balls that went through for the scoring opportunity. So I like the look of it, and I think it says we are dominant. There's 3 dominant line-out players that have, I think, understood the Lions line-out. So I think that there has to be a little bit more, maybe, confusion in the Lions line-out, you know, when they set up and there's some disguise. So that's my kind of 10 penneth on the Boks. I think the Boks are going from strength to strength, and I think they're going to want to repeat that second half and put that over maybe a 60, 65 minute and look to undoubtedly put their own stamp on this test series with a dominant win. That's my perspective on their basis. From the Lions, I think the Lions, certainly have enough quality in that side to challenge and to overcome the adversity over the last week, notwithstanding the selection balance. But they just need to do it better, for longer and for harder, and not have this reliance on the bench players coming on to do something special to unlock the game, because that I just don't think that's going to work. it may be their Achilles heel.
You want a prediction from ourselves?
I mean, we could do that. We are running out of time on the Zoom call, so we've got about 5 minutes left. So let's go to predictions, Mark.
Okay, quick prediction from my side. I think the Boks will take it by 7 to 8 points, and I think they'll be comfortably in charge of the whole test match. I just believe they're a bit more settled.
Scotty, you're up. What's your prediction?
Yeah, I last weekend was the perfect opportunity to close it out, but I do feel like Mark. I think this is possibly a 5-7 point decider. Whilst the scoreline may be a lot higher, I still think the dominant performance will come from the Boks.
Yeah, I've got to agree with that. I don't think the score will be as wide a margin as in the second test, but I do think the Boks will take it. Fellas, enjoy the third and final test in the series, the decider. It's been a great ride. In some ways, it's gone too fast. Thanks for checking in again, and thanks for all the insights. And to everybody watching the show, enjoy the decider, and thanks for tuning in.